What's up, and welcome back to Gabe Miller Music. I'm still on my synthwave and lo-fi kick, so today I want to try to combine the two as seamlessly as possible using the Roland MC-101. So I'm going to walk you through the making of process, and then at the end play the full beat. My plan is to recreate on camera what I created off camera. That way I already know what the result is going to be and where I'm headed, but you get the general steps of what this does take to create this from scratch. So I've got some drums, custom drum samples, and I've massively cut the attack on this clap sample. I've turned down these hi-hat samples a bit. I've got a balance that I'm pretty happy with. So a few things I'm going to do. I'm going to start a new clip. I'm going to keep this to 16 bars for now. I'm going to put in some steps. Right now, this is straight ahead. So the basic way we're going to get a kind of wonky beat is to have every second hi-hat be scooted a little bit forward in time, and then have this main clap element hit a little bit early, and then kind of fit everything else in the pocket around it. To do that, I could either just right away record in unquantized, or I could hop into the step sequencer and dial it in manually, which is what I've chosen to do in this case. So check this out. If you hold down Shift and select a step, you get the parameters for that step. The big one is this one right here, this second knob, that will allow me to adjust the timing, scooting a note forward or backward from its default spot. So I'm going to crank this up a bit to a consistent amount. And I'm going to do this by ear, which I've already done. So I know that I wanted to do 25. And then I also want to turn down the velocity a bit. And the nice thing about doing this is that it'll kind of remember where your knob positions were. So if I go and select my next step and turn this, it'll already drop me in basically where I want to be. And I can do the same for these. I could also try to copy these steps over, but I feel like this is just as fast, really, for a single bar, especially if my velocities don't need to be crazy precise, although I do want my little micro steps to be pretty precise. So now this is going to help us dial in our tempo, basically. I'm going to put in an initial kick because I want this to hit perfectly on the grid. I'm also going to go ahead and punch in the clap into the step sequencer. So the nice thing is you can slide stuff backwards, so you don't need to put it in the previous step and then scoot it forwards. No. We don't have to deal with any of that ridiculousness. Let's just scoot this back to somewhere around there. So at this point, we've got kind of the bones of our beat ready to go. So now, pro tip, if you want to double a pattern, you press sequence plus the measure button. So now, this pattern is 2 bars long. So I don't have to punch in those slightly swung hi-hats or anything like that. It's ready to go. And now I'm going to make sure that I turn off input quantization, and I'm going to try to record something that's at least vaguely in the pocket and then dial it in afterwards. And we can also get our other hi-hat in there. So now I can go back into the sequencer and dial some of that stuff in. If it's not quite hitting where I want it to, I obviously played that pretty sloppily. So I'm going to spare you all of the fine tuning and trial and error and get to the final result. It's a little off kilter, maybe a bit sloppy, but hopefully it works. So let's bring in our next element. One of the preset stage electric pianos, which is quite nice. And right off the bat, this could stand to sound a little vibier. So I'm going to go to Shift and Sound, pull up my multi-effects. And in this case, I've already queued this up, but I'm going to use the phonograph effect that was added, I believe, in the latest firmware update, if I recall correctly. And I can dial in those effects quite a bit. There's a little bit of distortion and saturation going on, a little bit of dust, and a little bit of warble. That's that wow and that flutter. Here's without. There's width. I try to keep it somewhat subtle, but I want it to be able to stick out in the mix, and I think this works quite well. So in this case, I am just going to record with input quantization on, because this is mostly just going to be held out chords. We're basically going to do that and that. So I might have to do this in a couple of steps here. So that's the foundation of our beat. Very simple chord progression and some kind of off-kilter drums with these little like flams, all that kind of stuff. Let's keep building. This is going to be kind of my layering track where I just throw in a bunch of clips with a bunch of different sounds. So if you didn't know, if you hit shift and then one of the tracks, you can change the sound source from being on a track by track basis to being on a clip by clip basis. These days, I always have at least one track where its sound source is set to clip. That way I can layer up a bunch of different clips with a bunch of different sounds that would go well together. And then in post, I can layer all those up and get a lot more layers than, well, any Roland Groovebox allows natively. So for instance, this clip has this deep bass preset where I also went into the settings and just tweaked that portamento to taste. And I can go ahead and record a very simple bass line. And I need to do this piecemeal because I want to have an octave jump here. And I want the two notes to overlap so that I can actually get that little glide activated. It's an extra step, but I think it is worth it. And let me just double check. Yep, I don't have overlapping notes on that first note. And if I did, I would have just deactivated, in this case, this C sharp. So we got a bass line, and I'm absolutely planning to sidechain that to the kick in post, probably using Devious Machines plugin Duck. We can also reinforce those chords. So for instance, that pad gets really harsh. I'm very much going to find that painful frequency and dramatically cut it in post. This is from the random patches. Ow. See, that needs to change. I'll spare you the actual recording process. You get the idea. I'm just going to record both chords with no extra bits and bobs. Just very simple held down chords. I've also got this bass with a nice little delay on it. That is, in this case, the mod delay. I believe that's stock in the preset, if I recall correctly. Another pad from the random patch generator. And because I can't help myself, another pad from the random pad generator. This one's fun, nice and phasey. That will need to get pushed into the background quite a bit, I think, though. That's our bass. And then I'm going to have this start a little bit late. And then I'm going to push that way into the background and probably like reverb it out until it's not particularly rhythmic anymore. But that brings us to our final and maybe one of the more important elements, the main lead. This is the Polysynth 1 preset. I keep coming back to this because it's just really nice. And it's great for like a multitude of things, either chords or melodies, all that kind of stuff. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and record a pass of this in a new pattern right now. And I am going to turn off input quantization for this. I'm going to try to play this somewhat within the pocket of the beat and then make minute tweaks afterwards. Nice. You will notice some pretty intense voice stealing going on here. So when I record these tracks in post, I'm going to like disable pretty much everything other than a kick, just so I can like match stuff up to the grid. That'll sound a lot better. See, now it gets to ring out all nicely. So see, some of those notes feel like they're hitting maybe a tad early. So now I can begin, well, I've already done it off camera, but I can do the painful process of micro adjusting notes, second guessing myself, and generally having a minor existential crisis. For example, this note, I can select it, change its timing a little bit, and then just let it absolutely take over my brain. This one needs to come like a little bit later. And I can just go through somewhat methodically and try to adjust everything until it really feels in the pocket, but not too all over the place. Also, this patch sounds really nice if you play around with the filter. So I'm going to make sure to record some passes of filter movement because, for one thing, I just think it sounds really nice. And then for another thing, it'll be super useful when arranging. Now that I had all my individual elements, I recorded those individual tracks into my DAW and then did a full arrangement and mix and master, paired it with some rain sounds I recorded myself with my Zoom H1, and then had a guy who actually has had releases on the Lo-Fi Girl channel just do a final mix and master because I was having just a little bit of trouble getting it from 90 to 100%. All that being said, here's the final version, which also ought to be up on streaming services by now. If you'd like some more MC-101 synthwave inspiration, you can check out this video up over here. And if you'd like to see some more lo-fi adjacent beats from scratch, you can check out this video up over here. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll be back with a new video in a little bit.